Okay, my name is Gary Cornwell. We're making a recording of a conversation concerning a breach of security that we have discovered at the Select Committee on Assassinations. Would you state your name?
Regis Blahut.
And would you spell your last name?
B-L-A-H-U-T.
As we explained in an informal conversation before we begin to make this tape recording, the committee has discovered that they discovered on June the 23rd, 1978, that the contents of a safe containing autopsy materials in our security office were tampered with, and that some of the books of photographs in the safe had been in part disassembled. And we are in the process of talking to those persons who our records indicate had access to the security office on that date. We have determined that a number of people had such access, including various members of our own staff and yourself. And we are in the process of trying to determine who may have taken the books, disassembled any one or more of them on that or some prior date. First, you are an employee of the CIA, is that correct?
Mm-hmm.
And would you state what the nature of your business has been at the committee?
Security liaison.
Would it be fair to state that basically you have been assigned by the agency to safeguard many of its documents, which have been on temporary loan to the committee and for short periods have been stored in safes on the committee's premises?
Yes.
And would it be accurate to state that you have performed that function on many days periodically, not every day, but on many days periodically, at least since roughly the first part of May of this year?
Yes.
If I could ask you to focus on June 23rd, which would have been a week ago last Friday, today being July the 11th. I'd like to ask you if you can recall on that day observing any persons in the security office taking any items from or replacing any items in a large black safe which sits in the right rear corner of the innermost office in the security space.
I can't say specifically that day or any other date or date, but I have witnessed people going in and out of it and taking material in and out of it.
I might simply explain that the committee has used that safe for the storage of what we may generally describe as autopsy-related materials, consisting of photographs, x-rays, and various items of clothing pertaining both to Governor Connolly and the late President Kennedy. Would would it be fair to state that because you have been in that office in conjunction with your duties over the last at least 2 months or more, that you have at least overheard conversations to the effect that that was the type of materials which were in that safe?
Yes.
Would you describe for us what you have observed and on which occasions during your tenure in this assignment in the nature of the physical items in that safe?
What I've seen and what I know that's in there is some clothing, a necktie, some photographs, and that's about the extent of specifics as far as knowing what is in there in detail. I don't know what's in there in detail, itemized, or how many, or whose or what, other than the pictures that I saw.
Your duties have related to materials which have been stored in a different safe, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And that would be a small 2-drawer safe?
2-drawer safe.
And it would sit in that same office to the right of the large black safe we're talking about, is that correct? Would you describe the circumstances under which you have observed materials on one or more occasions being taken from or replaced in the black safe containing the autopsy documents and items of clothing?
Describe how I saw it.
What have you observed with respect to that safe and its items?
Sitting in the same room, observing our safe while keeping in touch with our material that people were reading. Other people have entered the room and removed, apparently, at times, stuff that contained or was contained in the safe. Took it to other parts of the building, which I don't know where. They took it out of the room. Some they have laid down on either the windowsill or on top of the safe, or the desk that's in their table, reading table, and have gone out of the room to later return it or place it back in the safe.
All right. I believe that, tell me this is substantially accurate, during our preliminary conversation, you described one basic routine which you had observed periodically over the last 2.5 months, which was people coming in, opening the safe, removing items, shutting the safe so that it's not ajar, but not necessarily locking it, and then coming back later in the day, putting items back in the safe, and at that point locking it. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And in addition to that usual routine, I believe you described 2 specific instances in which items were left laying in that room. Is that accurate?
Yes, sir.
The first of the events you described earlier related to a necktie in a black plastic bag.
Yes.
Would you tell us what you can recall about that day? First, approximately when did it occur?
The dates, again, are days I couldn't say a date because I wasn't familiar with them and I didn't really care about them. Mm-hmm. And didn't have no reason to mark down dates. Mr. Councilman come in, had taken and removed from the safe some materials for whatever use he had to do with them, and had laid a plastic bag on the table there, on the reading table, and had gone out, and then later came back and returned the material that he had taken out along with that, but had left the plastic bag.
Okay, the basic materials that he had taken out consisted of what?
Itemized list I couldn't tell you, but I know there was a shirt and a suit on a hanger.
All right.
Okay. Whatever else there was included, I couldn't be specific.
The councilman you're talking about is Jim Councilman of our staff, is that correct?
I don't know his first name. I just know him by councilman.
Okay.
and he is a staff member.
Tall, dark-headed fellow.
Yes, sir.
All right.
The bag was laying on the table, and when he returned and put the stuff back on, I had been sitting in there and was removing our items off the table to put back in the safe to leave for the day when I picked this plastic bag up and a tie fell out, a necktie. And which time I placed back on the table and called Councilman and told him about it. And he in turn had done whatever he had to do with it. I suppose secured in a safe. I don't know. I wasn't in the room when he actually put it back in. Or
that was during the late hours of the day when you were about to leave. Is that correct? So the only thing that happened there was when you were cleaning up in order to leave for the day, you discovered the black plastic bag with a necktie in it, called Councilman. He came in, took it, and you left. Is that correct? Yes. So you don't know what he did with it after that?
No, I don't know what procedure he used.
And on
another given day, what day again or length of time it was, there had been some plastic folders or binders, 3-ring or 4-ring, I don't know how many rings were in it. They were black plastic and it had been left out on a windowsill. And I don't know who the person is, whether, by name or otherwise, I wouldn't even know because I just don't remember who put them out there. They had been going through, several people had been going through and getting material, and these books were left out. And I had taken this certain book and leafed through it and spotted pictures of John F. Kennedy.
Okay. The first event, which involved Jim Councilman, or Councilman as you know him, and the black plastic bag and the necktie. Earlier you said that to the best of your recollection that would have been approximately a month ago. Is that correct?
Somewhere close to that as far as time.
Okay. Early to perhaps mid-June in that neighborhood.
Yes.
All right. And on that occasion, the only items that you observed, which under the circumstances you had reason to believe came from the black safe, were items of clothing. Is that accurate?
Yes, sir.
No black binders, no photographs, x-rays, or anything like that you can recall?
I can't really say.
Okay, to the best of your memory, it was simply clothing.
Yes.
All right. And on that occasion, do you recall anyone other than Jim Councilman handling the material?
No. Well, no. That was another occasion that somebody had stuff out and they were using it out in the security office, but I wasn't aware of where it came from or how it got there. But as far as that day, it was only Jim Councilman taking it out, bringing it in, and laying it down on the table.
All right. On the other occasion, then, that you just described, you said there was a black binder laying on the windowsill.
Yes, sir.
I'm not sure how you phrased it just a moment ago when we talked earlier this morning. You said it was just one book. Is that your recollection?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And this event, as you described it earlier this morning, occurred, to the best of your recollection, sometime shortly after you took this present assignment, which, again, to the best of your recollection, would have probably been early May. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay, and on this day, do you recall anyone being in that space, taking things from or replacing things in the black safe?
No.
Okay. Then, on that day, all you can recall is there was a single black binder laying on the windowsill, which is right adjacent to the safe.
Yes, sir.
And in as much detail as you can recall it, tell us what happened on that day.
Well, to the best recollection would be that there were several people reading, which they were reading material out of the safe that we have here to maintain. At that time being relatively crowded in the room, I would seat myself between the two safes over there. One is on the left and one is on the right, between or right at the front of the window.
Okay, there is a chair which often sits right in front of the window and that would be directly in front of the black safe containing the autopsy materials, correct? Okay. And then, as you sit in the chair with your back to the window, the black safe would be on your left, and there's another safe to your right. Is that correct? No. As you sit in the chair with your back to the window.
Oh, okay. Yes.
On that occasion, then, you were sitting in the chair.
Right, sitting in a chair with a binder on a windowsill.
All right.
Turn I had picked up and leafed through just to notice the pictures. See what was in it.
Okay.
Being nosy.
Did anyone give you the book on that occasion and tell you to look through it? Okay, it was simply a book laying there which you picked up out of curiosity and leafed through.
Yes, sir.
On that occasion, what type of pictures were in the book?
Well, one that I can really remember was like from the chest to the head of President Kennedy. And having some experience with dead people, he was obviously dead.
All right. And do you recall any other pictures other than the one which was from chest up, a picture of his head?
No, because I leafed through it. I didn't, specifically stop at each individual picture. I saw him, just laid it down.
Did you flip through all the pictures in the book?
No, I wouldn't say I hit all pictures. How you would do through a book by leafing, I don't know. Well, you consider that I went through all of them or fingered all of them just by, something of this nature.
Just picked it up and flipped the pages real fast?
Yes, sir. When I spotted one, I, kind of looked at that one individual that I had spoken to you about.
In other words, in one motion, by just bending the pages and letting them flip across like that. So you saw one headshot, and you stopped at that point, looked at it, and then closed the book.
Closed the book. Then moved away.
On that occasion, were all the pages attached to the binder? Attached to the ring, so that they were in the book?
Well, that I couldn't say. None of them had come out literally or anything, so I would assume that they were, inside the book secure.
All right.
I don't know.
When you bent the pages in order to let them slide through your fingers real fast, and they all seemed to be intact as best as you could tell. And on that occasion, were all the pictures still encased in the cellophane sheeting which holds them in the book? Were they in the sheeting?
I would say so. It was a book full of plastic covers.
Okay.
Now,
plastic.
I would assume that all the pictures or whatever, all of it that this book included was encased in those plastic covers.
All right. Would it be accurate to state that the kind of plastic cover you're describing is one that has holes in it to hold to the binder, and then usually whatever it is that you want to observe is inside of the plastic coating? In this case, the pictures.
That would be assumption, because I would.
Best as you recall.
Best as I recall, it was a plastic insert inside of a black, I guess it's vinyl or plastic binder.
Okay.
Approximately, inch and a half thick.
All right.
Something like what you have on your desk there.
Okay, black binder, about an inch to inch and a half across the back, thick. And after you had simply flipped through it to see what was in the book, did you put it back on the windowsill?
Well, I never removed it from the windowsill. It was, sitting on a windowsill, and with that I used it.
Were the pictures in black and white or color, or do you remember?
The one that I specifically looked at, I think there was some color in there, but the one that I looked at wasn't color.
Apart from the two occasions on which you have just described, were there any occasions on which you personally observed any of the materials from the safe?
I don't understand the question.
Well, you've described two events in which you once found a sack with a tie, and on the other case, personally looked in the book. Is that the only two occasions on which you personally looked at was in the safe, apart from simply seeing someone
seeing somebody, yes,
take it and
yes,
walk out
I
with
would
it.
say so.
That's the only two times.
I don't remember. There was a time when I helped them. I think it was putting stuff into the JFK, not JFK, but Martin Luther King safe on the other side. But I gave him a hand because the stuff was falling out, and I helped him put it in. But I don't recall really that I did do anything in that safe.
All right. I asked you this earlier, but I know at one point there was crowding of the materials in the safe that you have been here to supervise.
Mm-hmm.
Did that crowding situation, I was having too many materials to go in the safe, ever result in you having to utilize any other safe for storage purposes of your materials?
Just yesterday.
Yesterday for the first time?
Yes.
And on that occasion, where were the materials, the overflow, stored?
Well, it wasn't an overflow. What it was material removed to be sent to headquarters by Dan Hardway.
Okay.
And packaged. And due to the envelopes and things that he packaged them in, we just could no longer put them in the two-drawer safe that we had.
Mm-hmm.
So we put them in the outside room, security room. What do you call it? The outside office.
Okay. The largest of the three offices in the security area. There's a safe in that one.
Yes.
All right. On prior occasions on which there were more materials of the agencies than could be stored in the small two-drawer safe that you have supervised, what were done with them on those occasions?
I removed them and took them back.
Took them back to the agency?
Yes, sir.
Throughout the period of time that you have been in and out of the office containing both the autopsy safe and your safe, has it ever remained open as opposed, or ajar, as opposed to simply not locked?
My safe or?
No, the large autopsy safe.
To the best of my recollection, I would say no. Because it usually is a pretty good assumption that when Bob or any of them come in there, they do close. They don't lock it. They just make sure it's closed.
All right.
Other than people going through the drawers, they're open at that time.
Right. So in other words, your observations have always been that someone would come in, open the safe, take what they wanted out, and then shut it. Maybe if it was during the day, not lock it, but at least shut it, and then come back later in the day, open it again to replace the items in it.
Well, on most occasions, yes. I couldn't say specifically that they didn't do this once or twice. I know they did it on the Martin Luther King safe when they had all the material out of there, and they had it all spooned in that room, also going through it, several people going through it. And the one incident where I think we spoke of this morning, where the man took, I think we identified him as Mark, the fellow down the hall.
Yes.
Took a bunch of the folders out. He had taken them out and gone and come back in.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't even know. I can't say that he left the safe open that day. But I know he went out immediately and come back,
within a minute or two.
Short period of time.
Within a minute or two or three, then took the rest of the materials and then shut the safe.
Right.
All right. The office is relatively small, is that correct?
Yeah, very small.
And the autopsy safe is approximately 5 foot high, would you say?
Yeah. And
it has a large door on the outside.
Yeah, it's what we call a planning safe.
Planning? Okay. And then you have to open the entire door in order to pull the drawer on the inside of the safe out. Is that correct?
That I don't know.
You don't know? Okay. All you know is that looking at it from the outside, you can see that it has a large door on it.
Yes.
So you don't have any idea what the inside of the safe looks like.
Well, it's a big open cavity as far as I knew.
Okay, so to your knowledge then, it may be completely open with no drawers in it.
Right, because they do come that way. We have the same type of safes that the agency did. plans and stuff of that nature hanging them. So
Okay.
whether they do anything with them other than that, I don't know.
When the door is open, it effectively, from all the rest of the room, blocks the view of the inside of the safe, does it not?
Well, unless you were standing right in front of it.
Unless you were the one that was standing right in front of it, taking things out of it, correct?
Yeah, I would say so.
Would that be the reason then that when you've been standing across the room and the door has been open, you haven't been able to even see what the inside of the safe looks like?
Well, from where I usually sit in the room, normally, you wouldn't be able to even see other than a part of the corner of the door, because I'm actually behind the safes when I'm sitting there.
But if you were standing in the room and someone came in to take something out of the safe and opened the big door, it would effectively block off the contents from sight of the inside of the safe.
I would say majority of it. I don't know, what portion of it would be able to be seen.
Okay. So at any rate, then, your knowledge is that time I'll call him back. Your knowledge is that people have opened the door, taken things out, put them back in, shut the door, as you previously described.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Are there any other occasions on which you have observed anything from that black autopsy safe laying at any location in that office?
I couldn't really say. Clearly, specifically to state that I saw something else, I didn't.
I believe you did describe to us earlier, and this is the first time we'd asked you, so I don't know, just tell me this is still consistent with your memory. Was there an occasion on which you saw a book or two laying on top of that safe?
Yeah, that was the same day that fellow Mark was taking all of those.
Oh, that was during the process of Mark.
It out and he, set them on top.
Okay, I didn't understand that earlier. Then Mark is a person you didn't know by name until earlier this morning.
Right.
We asked you who you had observed taking things from and putting things back in the safe. You said that you would recognize him but didn't know his name, and as we walked down the hall, you pointed him out to us. Is that correct?
Right.
And to which point we informed you that person's name was Mark Flanagan. Okay, on that occasion, you did see him removing the black binders from the safe, and during the process stacking them up on top of the safe. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay. And your recollection of that particular transaction was simply that there were a stack of the binders roughly 6 inches high. Is that the way you described it?
I would say several binders. I wouldn't, venture to say any specific distance or that. Several binders that looked approximately 6 inches high.
Okay. And several meaning, I guess when we determined this morning, to the best of your memory, 2, 3, or 4. Is that correct? Okay. You said yes. I don't know if it...
Well, whatever,
I just meant the recorder was... You need to talk... You nodded your head to me, and I knew what your answer was, but...
Yes.
Okay. We might simply tell you that the autopsy materials basically do consist of the clothing, the kinds of clothing you described, and the black binders, and some envelopes full of x-rays. Have you at any time ever seen any photographs, which might be autopsy photographs, photographs of bodies, of parts of bodies, or of the late President Kennedy, which were not contained in the type of black binder you have described, which would have been loose at any location in that room?
First of all, an autopsy photo, I don't know what they look like.
Okay.
Whether there's a specific photo, the ones I saw were approximate size of a binder. Colored picture of a dead person, which...
About an 8 by 10.
Right, somewhere around there. But now, whether they were specifically autopsy photos or what they were, I don't know. As far as laying around loose, when you say loose, they were out of a binder or something?
Yes.
No, not to my knowledge.
When you saw the one book in early May laying on the windowsill, was there anyone else in the room at any time?
That I couldn't tell you. There was no doubt readers in the room, but who they were, I don't know. Because I was sitting in a room with these people when it occurred. But I couldn't say any individual by name, because then I couldn't back that up anymore.
Would it be then consistent with your memory that, I believe you told us this morning that your recollection was there was probably no one in the room at the time that...
No. This morning I said that there was people reading, and due to the people reading in there, I had no choice but to be over by the window sitting.
Okay.
And this is when the book was there, and who left it there or what date. I don't keep a daily log like they do in the security office, so I couldn't pinpoint something and say, yes, on this day such and such was reading.
Okay. At least whoever was in the room had nothing to do with the autopsy, to your knowledge.
No.
And they were simply over at the tables in the room reading other material.
Correct.
So they didn't, on that occasion, have anything to do with any of the autopsy materials, to your knowledge.
No.
Did you discuss with them the autopsy materials on that occasion?
No, I very rarely discuss any of the material that I see there with anybody.
Do you know whether or not they even knew what was in that book?
When you say they, first of all, I don't know remember who was there.
Yes.
Second of all, I don't know whether they knew what was there, or whether they even thought that this material, because at times I bring my own reading material, and they may have thought that this was the fact.
Okay, so you didn't discuss with them then the photos at that time?
No.
Have you ever at any time discussed the contents of that safe with anybody on the staff?
I had a conversation with Councilman about it, as to stuff that was in there, similar to what I had on Martin Luther King with the silver nitrate that's on the maps and things.
You mean at the time you found the tie in the sack?
That day particularly, was one.
What was the nature of the conversation?
Just a matter of what was that and whose suit it was, I don't recall.
Did you ever discuss the books with Councilman, the black binders?
I don't think I have.
Have you ever discussed the black binders or the photos with anybody on the staff?
Not in of Kennedy, no. The only photos that I've ever had, really access to and spoke of was when I came from a trip, and it was photos of the area in Texas, but not an actual discussion of any photos.
Okay. Based on either conversations you have had or overheard with any member of the staff,
do you have reason to believe that anyone other than the security personnel, our security personnel, or Mark Flanagan or Jim Councilman, has knowledge of those photos or has an interest in them?
I don't understand that. You're saying just those people have access to it or something?
Based on any conversations you've had with our staff or overheard, do you have reason to believe anyone on the staff would have an interest in those photos other than Jim Councilman, possibly, since he had the clothing out of the safe, or Mark Flanagan, because he removed the books from the safe on one occasion, or our security personnel who helped him open the safe. So, to the best of your knowledge, that exhausts the number of people on the staff that you have observed or overheard working with the material or expressing an interest in it.
Actual witnesses.
That's what I meant.
Taking it out of the safe, and yes.
All right. Did you ever discuss with anybody the fact that you had seen the autopsy photos before we asked you about it here today?
No, not the best of my knowledge. No.
How long did the process of flipping through that book take? Just a second or two?
I don't really know, Gary.
Less than a minute?
I guess you could consider it less than a minute. It didn't take very long.
Have you, on any occasion, ever seen any of those photos out of their plastic binders?
No, I think you asked me that once before.
Apart from the security personnel who would know the combination to the safe and have reason to help Mark Flanagan perhaps take the books out or put them back. Apart from them, or Mark Flanagan, or Jim Councilman, have you ever seen anyone open or close that safe?
I couldn't, specifically say yes, no, or otherwise. Security people are the ones that usually open it. And if it has a sign on it, I noticed that people would come in and get what they need from various safes. So there could have been any, one individual going there at a specific time that I didn't even, wasn't aware of. My back could have been to it or something like that.
But anything you observed?
No, not that I can specifically remember.
And did you ever have an occasion to open or close that safe?
I don't think so. I don't recall anything because it wasn't never clear in my mind that I had a reason to or didn't have a reason to.
Well, I couldn't think of any reason either. The only reason I could think of was the possibility that some of your materials have been stored in there.
No.
But apart from that, do you recall any other occasion on which you would have had a need to open or shut it?
Mm-mm. Now, I can't say, that I didn't walk by it and give the door ajar or something if I was that way, but I don't recall that.
Might have walked by it and just shut it.
Yes, to go to the window or something of that nature, but I don't specifically to state that it was ever like that. I don't know. I say
to the best of your memory, it's always been shut, except at the times when people were taking things out and putting them back in.
Yeah.
Is there anything else that you can think of that you observed or overheard which might shed light on who may have taken photos out of those books, disassembled any of the books?
No, Gary, because it really didn't pertain to me, and most of the conversation that's held in there I don't have no use for, have no real thought of. So if there was any conversation about who was taking books or something like that, I wouldn't be able to specifically state, yes, Joe Blow or somebody like that. I don't ever recall.
I don't think I've stated Kenny Klein's been sitting here listening to all of this. Do you have any questions, Kenny?
No, I don't.
Okay. I guess that's all. Thank you very much. Just one final question, to be sure that I was using the words in the same sense that you understood them. The thing that we found on June 23rd were some loose photos that had been removed from books. And to be sure that we've got everything that's in your mind on that subject matter, let's call the black binder that you described the notebook. And let's call the plastic sheets that hold the photos by that name, the plastic sheets. As you described it, each photo was in a plastic sheet, correct?
I didn't see any that were out. I saw them in a book and they were in a plastic sheet.
All right. The specific question that I want to ask is whether or not at any time you ever saw any, so two parts. First, did you ever see any of the plastic sheets containing photos outside of the black binders?
No, not that I can recall.
Have you at any time ever seen any of the photos outside of the plastic sheets that would ordinarily hold them in the black binders?
Not that I can recall.
All right. The reason I asked you the question again was, when the first time I asked it confused Kenny. He thought that we were talking about the plastic, I think I used the word plastic binders or something, and he didn't understand whether I was talking about the black books or the plastic sheets inside that were holding the photos. And that's the reason I want to go over one more time with you, just to be sure that we didn't confuse each other. But at any rate, you have never seen either the plastic sheets out of the binders, out of the black binders, nor have you ever seen any loose photos that were not in their plastic sheets, either inside or outside of the books, correct? That's accurate.
Yeah, I would say that.
Okay, thank you. Today is July the 13th, and we are here to record a statement from Regis Blahut. My name is Gary Cornwell, and also with me representing the Select Committee on Assassinations is Ken Klein. We are making this recording in order to correct various points of information concerning a violation of security provisions which the committee discovered on June 23rd, 1978, and which we previously discussed on July 11th. 1978. Would you state your name?
Regis Blahut.
At this time, Mr. Blahut, we do not wish to go over all of the matters we asked you about on July the 11th. Rather, we wish to confirm various information which you provided to us informally without a recording being made earlier today over the last approximately 1 hour or so. At the beginning of that earlier conversation, we explained that the committee had conducted additional investigations since the time that we spoke on July the 11th, and in light of that, wish to ask you additional questions. First, let me ask you, with respect to the information you provided on July the 11th, to the effect that you had only observed a black binder containing autopsy photos of John F. Kennedy on one occasion, in other words, observed not simply the black binder, but the contents of such a black binder in the security space, and that one occasion occurred shortly after your arrival to perform your current functions on behalf of the agency in the committee space, namely approximately during the early part of May 1978. Would you tell us whether or not that information was correct? In other words, whether or not you only observed a black binder and its contents on one occasion?
You know, I said earlier there was one occasion, and as far as the May or June, I don't know, and won't specify what date. There was 2 occasions that I did look at the binders with these photos in them.
Then, without regard at this point to the exact dates of those 2 occasions, would you describe for us, as best as you recall, what happened on the first of the 2 occasions?
First occasion, Jim Councilman had taken some material out of the safe. Specifically what it consisted of, I couldn't give a detailed itemized list, but he did take some clothing and stuff out of there. And upon his removal of that and leaving the room, there was a book left on a windowsill, which I went through and looked at specific pictures that were in this folder. And another occasion was when the person that I identified in the earlier tape as Mark had taken some books out along with one of the security men who I don't remember exactly who it was. There was the same situation of a book left on a windowsill which I had gone through, which appeared to be the same type of pictures if my memory serves me.
So, the first occasion is tied, in your memory, to Jim Councilman removing clothing from the black autopsy safe in the security office. And on that occasion, you recall particularly that part of the transaction involving the clothing was that a necktie had been left in a black plastic bag. Is that correct?
Yes, on a reading tape.
And it was on that same day that you recall first looking through the black binder containing the autopsy photos.
Yes.
If I were to tell you that the log, which is maintained for purposes of checking out and returning items from that safe, reflects that Jim Councilman did remove items of clothing from that safe on June the 12th, 1978. Would you tell us whether or not that would be possibly the occasion on which you had just described?
I'll just put a date with that. I couldn't put a date with that to be sure. But he was the one that did remove the stuff, and he was the one that was in the safe at the time that I looked at the pictures that were on the windows.
All right.
But as far as the date, I couldn't relate that date to him being in there. Because I just don't know the date.
Okay, what you're saying is that you can relate your having observed the contents of the book with the event of Councilman removing clothing from the safe.
Yes, removing.
But you have at this time no independent recollection of the exact date on which that occurred.
Right.
On that occasion, as you described to us on July the 11th, you discovered the black plastic bag containing a tie late in the afternoon, and at that point called Councilman, who came into the security office. You gave him the tie and the bag, and it was approximately the time you were leaving for the end of the day, and so upon giving it to him, you left the premises and therefore did not know what he did with the tie and the black plastic bag.
I did not give him it. It was laying on the table.
Okay, you pointed it out.
I pointed it out that it was in there.
All right. And then you left, and so you don't know what he did with it.
I don't know what he did with that.
Now, when in relation to that particular event, the pointing out of the tie and the bag, was it, in other words, when during the day was it on that date that you observed the autopsy book?
It was earlier in the day. At a given time, I couldn't say. Or morning, afternoon, or that I don't know. Because the incident that occurred there, I wasn't aware of any type of wrongdoing other than the fact of being nosy. And I did look in them, but to state I looked at them at 10 o'clock in the morning, I don't know.
On that occasion, the book was laying where?
On a windowsill.
And did you request anyone's permission prior to looking in the book?
I had talked to Jim, and I says, "Is it all right if I look through some stuff?"
Is that the way you phrased it? Roughly.
Roughly, yeah.
Do you know whether or not?
If I look at this stuff.
Do you know whether or not he knew what you referred to when you said this stuff?
That I wouldn't put words in his mouth or his mind.
Well,
as to whether he knew or what anything, because
did he know whether or not
directed as a book or as a safe or anything? Just directed, "Do you mind if I look at this stuff?"
Did you pick the book up and show it to him at that point?
Not that I couldn't say.
Did you tell him what was in the book?
I couldn't answer that correct as far as saying, yes, I did say, can I look at pictures or what? Is that what you mean? I don't think I could say.
Did you and he say anything to each other? Or was there anything about the way that event occurred upon which you could tell us whether or not he realized what he was being asked was whether or not you could look at the autopsy photos?
I couldn't say that. What his realization was or anything, because I had befriended quite a few of these people in here, and on different occasions I had access to look at other things.
Have you ever on any occasion asked permission to look at any other materials of the committee?
Yes.
And on what occasion was that?
There was an occasion when I had the safe open that contained stuff that pertained to Martin Luther King, such as Earl Ray's baggage and the gun and so on down the line.
And that would have been in open view in the room that you were in, is that correct?
Well, I was also in Xerox room and the room that I was in, and also helped people put it in because of some falling out when they were installing it. Also helping them with the box when they were folding the stuff up to put back in the box.
Okay, so you had an occasion, you had one occasion on which you assisted in the replacing of that type of item relating to the Martin Luther King case into a safe utilized for that purpose, correct?
Yes.
Do you remember approximately when that event was?
No, I couldn't say.
Do you recall who you dealt with on that occasion?
There was about 3 or 4 people. One in particular that was doing the looking for whatever item he was looking for, as I understand it at that time, was a map. And Gerald had looked through some of the stuff, and other people had come in and looked at it. Now, there was probably 5 or 6 at the time. I couldn't be specific as to one individual person other than Gerald. I know because I had talked to him about it.
All right. Gerald Hamilton. Or do you know his last name?
No, sir.
A relatively young, thin, black man?
Yes, sir.
All right. On this occasion, then, in which you asked Councilman if you could look at the black binder containing the autopsy photos, as I understand your statement, it's that Councilman may or may not have known what you referred to.
Yes, sir.
And his reply was basically to what effect?
I'm sorry, when he were eating here. Where's that?
Could it have been basically, I don't know?
That's possible.
And he then, at that point, left the security office?
Yes, sir.
And you then looked through the book?
Yes, sir.
Yesterday, or not yesterday, but on July the 11th, 2 days ago, when we asked you about the occasion, at that time you were simply describing one occasion on which you had seen the autopsy photos, you described simply that you had picked them up and kind of spun through them.
Yes, sir.
And stopped momentarily at one photo and then shut the book.
Yes, sir.
Would that be an accurate description of the way you looked at the book on this occasion?
No, sir. I actually leafed through the pictures in the book, stopping and looking maybe at a longer time at one picture more than the other, and so on as I was looking through the book.
So in other words, on this occasion, what you actually did was to look at each page, one page at a time.
Yes, sir.
Pretty much throughout the whole book.
Yes, sir.
And on that occasion, were all the pages intact in the book?
That I couldn't say for sure, but I didn't, I wouldn't know whether they were specifically locked in there or what.
But none of them came out in the process?
No, not that I can, no.
The book didn't fall on the floor and you had to replace any of it, or any of the pages fall out while you were looking at it? And all of the pictures on this occasion, were they encased in the plastic sheeting which holds them in the book?
Best of my knowledge.
Now, the second occasion on which you looked at the autopsy book was after this one, is that correct?
Yes.
And it was an occasion which you associate in your mind with Mark Flanagan being in the office and removing one or more books for his use from the black autopsy safe. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
On this occasion, would you describe as best as you recall the circumstances under which you looked through the autopsy book?
Well, the man came in with a security man, opened a safe. The general conversation, that some parts that I can remember, not specific, was the fact that he needed several books to go someplace, whether it was a hearing or what, I don't know. In turn, the person says okay, and they open the safe, and in the process of taking the books out, they had left the reading room where I was in. And along with that, as I peered over there, there was a book on the windowsill, which I in turn went over to look out of pure curiosity to see if there was any other photos than what I've already seen, and found that they were similar. And I had proceeded to go through it, and in which turn I stopped and went back and sat down, and I don't know how much time lapsed that they come back in and finished up their procedure and left.
On this occasion, did you again look at the pages one at a time?
Yes, sir.
And you were, on this occasion, sitting in the chair next to the window or standing?
Standing with my back to the door.
And on this occasion, did anyone give you permission to look at the book?
No, sir.
On either occasion, was there anyone in the room during the time that you looked at the books?
On the one occasion, yes, there were some readers in there. Who they were, I don't remember.
And do you remember which occasion that was?
No, I can't say which one, really. But I know at one time they were in there. I think it was the one with Councilman. I don't believe it was the one with the other fellow. I don't think anybody was in there at that time.
All right.
Because that was the reason why he did come in. Normally they didn't come in when we were in there with open material. But I think it was the one with Councilman.
All right. And on any occasion, did you ever go through the process which you described to us on the 11th of merely flipping through the pages? Or was that simply
for a third time? That was just simply a fabrication of what I should have told, what I've told you just now.
Okay, so when you told us that you simply took the pages and flipped through them by bending them up on the edge, letting them slide through your fingers real fast, that was not the truth?
No, sir.
On any occasion in which you have either personally handled a black binder containing autopsy photos, or on any other occasion in which you have been in a security room, have you ever observed any of the photos out of the book, either in their plastic sheeting or out of their plastic sheeting?
No, not that I can recall. No.
Why was it on the 11th that you told us there had only been one occasion on which you had looked at the book, and on that occasion you simply bent the edges up and let it slip through your fingers real fast to glance at it?
Well, it was just a matter of befriending these people, not thinking anything serious about what I did, that there was any type of criminal wrongdoing. It was just strictly being nosy. And I didn't want to get anybody in trouble for security reasons.
You stated that it was simply a matter of befriending these people. Who were you referring to?
Pretty much the majority of the people that I've had dealings with the committee. We've gotten to have a relationship that was friendly nature, and I would ask them questions, they would answer, and I didn't want them to jeopardize any of their jobs or anything like this, which occurred to me at that time, and I didn't really feel that It was all that wrong in what I did.
But do I understand that you felt that your looking at the books was wrong? Is that correct? And that someone on the staff was in part responsible for your action, and you didn't want to get them in any trouble?
Well, yes, sir. I felt that there was a breach of their security under what Mr. Blakey had explained to me, that more or less 90% of the material that I've seen or that they handle, I already know about, but the other 10% is what they don't want me to know about. And these are the things that he didn't want me to do. And that's when I really gave it a lot of thought and a seriousness, because I've never been involved with this type of committee.
On the 11th, when we talked to you, you stated to us that no one had given you permission on any occasion to look at the books.
Right.
That was not true.
No, it wasn't true. They did, matter at one time I wasn't given permission. I took it upon myself, and then the other time is when we discussed earlier with Councilman whether or not he understood what I said or was aware of what I said, I don't know.
Have you at any time ever opened the door of the autopsy safe?
Not that I know of, sir.
Would that be an event which you would remember?
Not necessarily, unless it was some specific thing that I either closed it or opened it for somebody that had to put something in there. But I don't remember the event because I didn't feel that I did anything wrong. There wasn't anything wrong committed at these times that that could really refresh my memory into an occasion of it. The majority of the time, the safes are closed, and if they are open, somebody's going through them, or if they are left open, they're out of the room for a few minutes and back, and only upon taking material out do they sign out for it. I don't really say, like I say, there's so many events occur in one given day here, I couldn't specifically state that. But I did or I didn't.
Do you have any recollection of ever doing that?
No, I don't.
The other day on the 11th, you mentioned that you had no knowledge of what the inside of the safe looked like. And I believe earlier today in our conversation, you stated the same thing.
I would say so, I don't know the physical makeup of the inside of the safe completely.
So, the other day you stated that, in fact, you didn't even know whether or not it had any drawers inside of it. Is that still the truth?
Yes, sir. I couldn't say whether it had a drawer, 2 drawers, or empty, because we do handle safes of that nature, and they have various things in them. If I recall, I think the other one on the other side is similar. I don't recall any drawer in there.
Given the rather cramped nature of the space, would you agree that there's not room for someone to sit and be in front of the door while someone else is getting in it? Or
I would say so.
Under those circumstances, can you recall ever being in front of the safe and helping anyone else open it? Or is that basically a one-person job?
Well, I would say it was a one-person job. I don't see why 2 people would have to open it, unless one was just holding stuff to get into it and put it back in. There might have been an occasion of that nature that I don't recall offhand. Somebody having their hands full to put stuff in there. But normal procedure opening a safe is one person.
As we described to you earlier today, the reason we wanted to talk to you again is simply for us to be able to understand what happened and the reasons for it. although we are not at liberty to describe to you everything we have learned in trying to unscramble the facts. I can tell you that part of our investigation entailed the taking of fingerprints. And that the information we derived from that process is still inconsistent with the recollection of the events which you have given to us. In other words, that your fingerprints were found at locations inconsistent with what you described to us. Is there anything else that you can recall at this time?
Not from what I, other than deviating from what I just told you, no. I don't recall ever having, dealt with the safe to manipulate it or anything of this nature to get in or fool with it. I can't say that I didn't help somebody put some stuff in there. I can't say that I didn't help somebody go in there at one time or another, but I can't recall it. And earlier when you said to me there was no mention, I assumed that there was something other than what you already told me. Like I say, none of these events really came upon me as any criminal intent. I took it as with a grain of salt as far as looking at them or doing anything of that nature. And so this is mainly why I don't specifically know various things. The fact that I saw the pictures, yes, I did look at them, and I looked at them thoroughly, and to say they were specific pictures of any type of investigation, no. They were pictures of President Kennedy's person.
Have you discussed the autopsy photos and your observations of them with anyone outside of the committee?
Possibly with my family. And I did mention it to Mr. Breckenridge and Stenbridge as far as what occurred and what I did do and the fact that I did look at the pictures. Any real recollection, other than general conversation with somebody of maybe a discussion of or a question to the fact that, how is the investigation going, some thoughts of it, but nothing of any value.
Did you have any such discussions concerning your observations of the autopsy photos prior to us first discussing it with you on July 11th?
I don't think I understand.
Did you have any discussions with anyone outside of the committee concerning your observations of
At the time I looked at the photos?
Yes, or any time from that point until we first discussed it with you on July 11th?
I possibly did, but couldn't give you specifics. If anything, it was with maybe a co-worker up at the agency or my family at home or something of this nature, but I don't recall any.
You don't recall who those persons would have been?
No, I couldn't. I wouldn't even pretend to give you names or times or places.
Do you have anything else? I guess there are no further questions. Do you have anything further that you would want to point?
Nothing other than the fact that I didn't feel that, there was anything really wrong other than being nosy. In the past, I've looked at other various things of the committee that have been exposed to me and of a general nature, and this is the same way I took these pictures, looking at these pictures.
I guess I might simply state that both this recording and the other one were provided by you voluntarily, and we do appreciate you talking to us and providing answers to our questions. Just one final question, I guess. When you first discussed the fact that we had asked you questions on this subject matter with Mr. Breckenridge, did you tell him the events as you've just told them to us here today?
No, sir. No, all I did was tell him, which he was well aware of. Apparently somebody must have called him and told him this. Well, they did, in order to ask him if it was all right to question. And all I did was tell him that I did see the photos on a couple of occasions, but didn't go into any specifics or details or anything of this nature.
Did you, though, tell him the truth with respect to whatever he asked you?
I would say so, because he asked me, did I see him? And I said, yes.
Did you tell him that you'd seen him on 2 occasions?
Just a couple of occasions. No, I didn't go into any, like I say, details as to where. Oh, I did tell him that I did see him on the windowsill.
But you did tell him that you'd seen him on 2 occasions?
A couple of occasions. I didn't say 2 occasions or any number, just a couple of occasions, yes.
Did you tell him whether or not you had received permission to look at him from any member of the staff?
No.
Did he ask that question?
No. I think he's under the same impression that I was after some of the reports that I made, that of the conditions that our material was being handled and so forth, that it was a shoddy type of thing, and he didn't go into any further detail.
And his impressions of that had been formed, I take it, from prior reports you had given him?
Yes, sir. Well, not only that I had given him, apparently that he had gathered elsewhere, I don't know. I'm not at will to even know that because I don't discuss.
But at least you had given him prior reports of your opinion to that effect.
Yes, sir.
And you don't know whether or not he had ever received any such information from anyone else?
I wouldn't be at will to say that anyway because I don't know.
Did you tell Mr. Breckenridge that when we had first spoken to you, you hadn't told us the whole truth?
No.
Did he ask or you offer him the opportunity to listen to the tape recording of your first conversation with us, which we provided you at the end of the conversation? Did he ask for an opportunity to listen to that tape recording?
No.
So, since July 11th, then, the fact that you didn't tell us the truth on all points wasn't discussed with Mr. Breckenridge?
No detail.
Has not been discussed with him to date?
No detail. And today's conversation isn't even known to him.
Did he ever even ask you whether or not you had told us the truth on the subject matters?
No, like I say, the conversation was very short, and I did get a reaming out that it was your property and I shouldn't have looked at it. But there was no discussion as to whether I told the truth or anything. Did I tell you? Did I look at them? And I said yes.
Guess there are no further questions. Thank you very much.